88. The nature of man and his creative calling. Sorel. God himself is the highest and most perfect, most everlasting primordial man out of himself. This means man is in himself a fire, whose emotion is love, a light, whose emotion is mind and wisdom, and warmth, whose emotion is the life itself in the fullest sphere of his about himself consciousness. If the fire gets more intense, also the light becomes more intense, and more powerful the warmth which creates everything, and finally shines far into distance. And the ray is light itself, contains the warmth in itself, and this creates, in a far distance, just like in itself. What is created increasingly absorbs more light and warmth, shines and warms increasingly further and further away, and again creates where it reaches. And in such a way, everything reproduces forever out of the primordial fire, primordial light, and out of the primordial warmth, and fills continuously more and more the infinitive space of creation. Thus everything takes its origin out of the primordial being of God, and develops itself until it resembles the primordial being of the primordial man, in which resemblance it then exists in an entirely independent freedom in the form of a man out of God, just like a God by himself, in the necessary arch-friendliness with the primordial God, since it is the same what the primordial God himself is. Where you can see light, fire, and warmth, man is either completed or in the beginning. Billions of light, fire, and warmth atoms cocoon themselves and produce forms. The individual forms seize each other anew, cocoon themselves into larger forms, which already correspond more to man, and develop themselves therein into a being. This being now produces already more of the fire, the light, and warmth. Together with this, a higher need for a higher and more perfect form arises. The many, nevertheless already more perfected forms in themselves tear apart their outer skin, seize each other, and with the substance of their will, they again cocoon themselves into a higher and more complete form. This continues until the perfection of man is reached, and then man develops himself until the state in which I am now, and therefore completely resembles the primordial fire, primordial light, and primordial warmth, which is God, whom I now see with a steady view in his primordial light. In him, the full fire and the full warmth, which is the only God from eternity to eternity. Man, therefore, is firstly a man out of God, and only then a man out of himself. For as long he is only out of God, He resembles an embryo in the mother's womb. Only if he becomes a man out of himself, according to the order of God, then he is a perfect man, because only thereby he can reach the true resemblance of God. If he has reached that stage, then he stays like a god in eternity, and has himself become a creator of further worlds and beings and people. Because it is strange that I now can see all my thoughts, emotions and desires, and my will is equal to the outer skin of that, what I have thought and what I have felt. See, in this way the creation continues always anew. The emotion as warmth, and therefore love, has the need to be a being. However, the more the emotion becomes stronger, and the more flames and warmth are produced in itself, also the light of the flames is getting stronger. In the light, the need of love is expressed in forms. But the forms arise and immediately pass again, just like the so-called eyelid pictures of a person with closed eyes and who has a heated imagination. But instead, others arise again, become bigger, stay longer, and take on more defined forms. But with perfected people, like with me now, of course, for just a short while, the form remains, because immediately seized by the will, it is quickly given an outer skin, whereby the appeared form is kept steady and cannot change any more. But since the outer skin is originally only highly ethereally tender, and therefore translucent, continuously more light and warmth from the Creator penetrates the now caught thought. This increases the caught thought's own light and warmth, the two spiritual elements from which it originally originated. And soon the caught thought begins to develop more and more, according to the light of wisdom and the most perfect realization, which arranges necessarily and purposefully, organically, the even most delicate construction more clearer than the brightest day in all its necessary parts, connections and limbs. Once the thought has an organically arrangement, an own life conscious of itself starts to come into being and directs itself. Now, one can imagine that a perfected person in a few moments can think and organize a countless number of all kinds of thoughts and ideas, and furnishes them organically completely. If he wants to put a skin around them with his will, they will survive and develop, and in the end themselves resemble the Creator in their natural highest limited self-perfection, and shall reproduce and create their own, and by doing so out of themselves, accomplish the endless multiplication of their own kind in the same manner in which they have stepped into being. Even the material world can show tangible proofs of that. Self-reproduction of the body you find with plants, animals, humans, and with celestial bodies, which also reproduce. However, limits have been placed to their reproduction. A seed pellet of a certain kind has only a certain number of reproduced identical seed pellets assigned to it, which number cannot be exceeded by it. The same with animals, namely, the bigger the animal, the more limited the reproduction. It is just the same with people, and a lot more so with celestial bodies. But in the kingdom of spirits of the perfected people, the emotion and thinking continues forever, just as with God. Since according to the previously described manner, each thought and each idea can be surrounded with a skin by the will of the Spirit who created it, and finally could become independent, it is understandable that the everlasting reproduction of beings can never come to an end. You, Zinka, are now asking in your soul, where in the end all the endlessly multiple created beings find space? If the creation will continue to increase forever in such an enormously multiple measure and relation. Oh friend, just think that the physical space itself is infinitive. And if you forever in every moment could create 10 times 100,000 suns, they would, if moving with the greatest speed through space, be lost forever in the infinitive space, as if no sun had ever been created. Nobody, except God, comprehends the eternal infinity of space. Even the greatest and most perfected angels cannot grasp the eternal depths of space, but only tremble before the endless depths of everlasting space. O friend, I can see now with the eyes of my soul the entireness of the material creation. This earth, its moon, the great sun, and all the countless stars which you can see, of which some of them, appearing to your eyes as a faintly shimmering speck, are in fact immeasurable large solar and world territories, containing milliard times milliards of suns, and even more planets, are less in relation to the present entire creation than a tiniest and finest sun-dust particle compared to the entire space full of stars visible to you. In addition, I can tell you that among the many stars which your eye can see are quite a few which diameter is many thousand times larger than the line itself from for you barely visible farthest star to another star in the opposite direction with the same distance. A distance, even if you would travel with the speed of lightning, it would take you longer than 1,000,000 times milliard Earth years. Thus, even individual bodies are of such puzzling size, and still they appear to your eye as barely shining specks of light, because of their too great distance from here. Nevertheless, all this, compared to the entireness of the entire creation, is, as already stated, a tiniest dust particle which can be easily carried by the rays of the sun. I say to you, You can create 1,000,000 suns with all its planets and moons and comets, and spread them out in this sun territory globe, and they will just as little restrict noticeably this globe space as a drop of water would noticeably enlarge the sea and its wide seabed. And 1,000,000 times 1,000,000 globes would be in the entire present territory of creation, just as little noticeable than 1,000,000 raindrops in the sea. Look at the whole world. How many thousands of brooks, rivers, and streams are flowing into the sea? But despite this, it doesn't expand one little bit. Now imagine as many creations over creations as you like in each moment, and they will get lost in the infinitive space, just as myriads times myriads drops of water falling into the sea each moment are lost in it. Therefore, you do not have to worry small-heartedly about the many creations, since in infinity there is forever sufficient space available for the infinite, and God is powerful enough to maintain everything forever and to finally guide everything to a main objective.